We are coming from Unisa in Pretoria for a high-level forum that is commemorating the 70th anniversary of the UN's Human Rights Declaration. This is, of course, an important document that can be used to hold governments accountable, morally accountable, and it is often used by civil society and activists, of course, that are fighting for human rights. Now, part of the principles that are entailed in this document include that everyone has a right to life, that all humans are born free and equal, and another is that no one shall be held in slavery. But of course, August being Women's Month, the focus today was mostly on women's rights, particularly here in South Africa. And to that point, I am joined by the UN Women Executive Director, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. Thank you very much for talking to us. In your speech earlier on, you mentioned that August might be a Women's Month, but there is a somber feeling to it. Talk to us about that.
Well, firstly, I want to start by wishing all the women and girls well. On this Women's Month. It's even hard to say Happy Women's Day because really what we are discussing this particular Women's Day are the challenges that we continue to face, which has made this to be one of the most somber, reflecting, not particularly jubilant Women's Month, because we see that even though we've made progress, our victories, our gains are being eroded, especially in relation to women's rights, because gender-based violence is a violation of rights. Our Constitution and the Charter that we were discussing, the Human Rights Charter that we were discussing today, have in common the protection of the rights of everybody. And the fact that we're dealing with gender-based violence at the scale at which it is at here in South Africa, it means that access to justice and protection of rights is in a crisis, and we need to find a way of fixing this and doing it fast.
And speaking of a way to fix this, you called for bold activism. You called for women to stand up and not to keep silent. So when we talk of bold activism and women speaking out, what do we actually mean?
Well, women have already come out. The total shutdown is a bold act. Not only did they come up to raise the problems, they have given us solutions. And the way forward has to be about how we actually implement those solutions and take them forward. But also women must continue to hold all of us accountable, the United Nations, the governments, the private sector, and everybody who has a role to play in order to make sure that these demands are met. Because as long as more than half of society is living in bondage, is experiencing violence, has inadequate access to justice, it means that we're all failing society as we are failing women and girls of our country.
And then, of course, South Africa is currently right now dealing with a hot potato issue, that is the issue of land reform. How do we ensure that women are not left out in that debate?
Well, we have to make sure that when we review the Constitution, we have to engender the clause that will address expropriation without compensation. It also has to address gender inequality and access to land and ownership to land by women, as well as productive use.
Today we also had a moment of silence honoring the late Zondeni Sobukwe, and the criticism that came out was we often remember our struggle heroes, those are female struggle heroes, once they are gone, and it was the same issue to some extent with Umama Winnie Tikezela Mandela. So are women struggle heroes not being recognized enough, and what can be done to deal with this?
Well, we definitely all guilty of not celebrating our heroes enough when they are still alive. Also, the fact that women continue to have to struggle to the extent that they do, sometimes I think they even forget that we are already standing in the shoulders of giants who have already done so much for us. So it's never too late for us to self-correct and to make sure that we pay due attention to the heroes and the generation that has come before us, and especially those that are still amongst us.
And just lastly, back to this forum, we have these talk shops. So what makes this different? I know there's a number of different groups that were here engaging in very insightful debates, but then is it not just another talk shop where we get nothing out of it in the end?
I think the level of activism impatience, dedication that we are seeing now assures me that this is not going to be a talk shop. We are concerned about timeframes, and also the fact that already government has given a date for a summit means that there is a sense of agency on all sides. But of course, we also have to stay focused and make sure that we monitor the delivery and that it is at the level at which we expect it to be.
And just your input, I remember on Women's Day when there was that march to the Union building reenacting the group of 1956, and some of the comments were coming, they were like, South African women are not yet free, they're not yet emancipated. What's your take on that?
Well, as long as democracy does not reflects in its highest and fullest representation the composition of everyone that it is supposed to represent, it means that there's a section of the population that is not enjoying its full freedoms. The fact that we have unequal pay, the fact that we're talking about gender-based violence, which predominantly affects women, does tell you that the freedom that women enjoy is not the full freedom that we fought for.
Thank you very much. That is Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka for your time and talking to us. She is the Executive Director of UN Women. And now I'm joined by another woman who was part of this forum here, Mabato Ramahoshi. Thank you very much, from SA Women in Dialogue. Yes, that is. Now, your point focused more on how the judiciary system is not protecting the women. Talk to us about that.
I think for us as Sawid, we're looking at the type of sentences that perpetrators get. If we do have minimum sentences, but if you look at the type of sentences that they get, are appalling. And as a result, we think that those are the things that make perpetrators continue to perpetrate. I was talking about the latest one that we have now of BRICS, that South Africa saw BRICS being sentenced for 15 years. And as activists were saying, at least some of the magistrates and judges are taking gender-based violence seriously. And lo and behold, last week we just saw that he is out on bail. Now, how do you go out on bail when you are sentenced? And we've got a campaign that says, remember my name. And that campaign, the people who lost their loved ones are saying to us, men who abuse the women, either they get bail, and once they are bailed, they never go back. So it means that there is no justice for gender-based violence. And others saying, after sentencing, because now the society has forgotten about them, they get out. So the judiciary, we need to ensure that there are mechanisms to see who goes to prison. When they go and apply for parole, the victim's family must be there to say, yay, they can come on or not. Because some of them, you remember now, I mean, you can say they have left a family, children of the person they've killed, they go out, they continue with abuse. We've got, as a country, we've got a lot of people who are reoffending, who are on bail. We've got young people who have been raped in Kimberley, of people who are out on bail for rape. So the judiciary is failing women and children. And that's where we're coming from.
A bold statement, the judiciary is failing women and children, so what must happen?
What we're saying is that the judiciary cannot want to be on their own and say when you want to intervene, you are taking what they are about. Firstly, they need to be trained on gender-based violence. Or every person now, we are socialized to look at things differently. So even those judges, they are socialized to believe that men are superior. Therefore, they must go for gender training. The Chief Justice must ensure that there is a body that looks at sentences and say, but in your court, we continuously see that you give minimum sentences for gender-based violence. And those are the ones that need to go for training.
So perhaps that's something that needs to be looked into, to research the sentences that they impose, and perhaps sensitize the judges and magistrates on the seriousness of gender-based violence. That is what you're calling for?
Definitely. The total shutdown movement now, we are looking at all the sentences that have been given. Commission on Gender Equality, already they have some of the sentences. So we are going to look at the sentence, the judge or the magistrate, and go to the Chief Justice and say, this is what we're talking about, to say perpetrators do not feel that they need to account. Look at this, and then we are saying, then if they don't go for training, they must be removed, because we cannot continue having judges and magistrates who fail women and children in the country.